Hello friends, how are you doing today? My name is Mary and this is Happily Ever Esch. So today I would like to share with you some books that I have recently read. It's kind of end of May and then June wrap up for me. So let's just get started. The first book that I read, well actually listened to, was the Lilac Girls. I listened to probably the first half on audiobook and then finished reading it physically, and I really enjoyed this. I read this as part of Krista over at Books and Jams Goodreads reading group, and I will put all of that information down below. She's been picking some really awesome books, and I've read a lot of things that I've really enjoyed, and this is one of them. So the Lilac Girls is World War II historical fiction, and it follows three different women's perspectives. The first being Caroline Faraday, who is an American socialite. She also works for the French consulate, and she just is kind of very highbrow and just a classy lady. And so we follow her perspective, as well as Herta, who is a German doctor during World War II, and then Kasia, who is a young Polish girl. And all of these storylines weave together to tell this really moving and beautiful story set during World War II. I really enjoyed Herta and Kasia's perspectives, I think because they were so different and they were really experiencing the action of the war, being in Germany and Poland during World War II. Caroline was a little bit more removed, being in America, and so I think I felt more distance from her, but all of the women are strong and independent and really have a strong sense of life and self, and this independence isn't always a good thing, but I thought that it was so interesting that the author painted these such strong characters. Caroline and Herta are both based on people who actually existed, and Kasia is based on a group of people. And so the author really does a great job of telling these women's stories. She painstakingly researched and got to know these women, and so she really crafts this wonderful and very real story for them. I will say it is very broad in scope in that it covers before the war, during the war, and after. And I mean, it is almost a 500-page book, but I still feel like that scope, while it was interesting to get to see that whole timeline, really keeps you at a distance from the characters because it is so broad and you are getting three different perspectives and you're just kind of getting little snapshots in the different time periods, and so that really does kind of keep you at a distance. But for the whole story, for the story as a whole, it really creates something special, and getting to see these women's lives and how they change and evolve, especially Herta and Kasia, to see how World War II and Hitler's rule really affected the ideology and just how their countries were governed. I was really impressed by this story. I don't read a lot of historical fiction, but I think that this is a great one. The audiobook was really great if you are into audiobooks. It did take me a while to get into because the story is just very richly told and there is so much atmosphere and there's just a lot going on. So it took me a while to get into the audiobook, and you really have to kind of concentrate and listen, but the narrators were really great and they had wonderful voice narration and brought to life the characters. There's three different narrators, and so the voices are all really distinct, and I thought that was really cool. So really high quality World War II fiction, and I would say if you're into World War II fiction, historical fiction, strong female characters, that this is something that you would really enjoy. The next book that I finished was The Winner's Curse by Marie Rutowski. This is YA fantasy. I would classify it as fantasy, and this follows Kestrel, our main character, who is a Valorian, and in this world the Valorians have conquered the Haurani people, and now the Haurani people are their slaves. And this book starts out as Kestrel and her friend are in the marketplace, and for some reason Kestrel is compelled to go to the slave market where she ends up purchasing a slave. And this is something that happens all the time in her life, and it's just very common in society. She's always been uneasy with the idea of ownership, which is kind of a different opinion to have in the world that she's living in. Kestrel is very drawn to Aaron, the slave that she purchases in the marketplace, and she kind of doesn't know why. He's very mysterious and dark and brooding, and the story kind of takes off from there. I thought that this book did a really interesting job in playing with the ideas of ownership and freedom, And this is obviously very tangible in the fact that in this society there are slaves, and so there's a very real picture of ownership and freedom and kind of the struggle there, but also the constraints in this society play really interesting with the idea of how society owns you and how you're free, and even if you are free under the law, what does that really mean? And we see this because Kestrel, as a woman in this time, is kind of expected to either get married or join the military. Those are her two options. And Kestrel doesn't really want to do either of those things. And so there's a lot of tension here and a lot of playing with that idea. So thought that that was very cool. Also, The Winner's Curse, which is the title, is based off the economic theory of the winner's curse, which is when you go into a bid or an auction or you're buying something, you might win, you might be the winner and get what you want, but at what cost did you have to pay to get there? And was that cost really worth it in the end? And kind of this idea of how far should you go to get what you want? How far is too far? And so that idea is really played with interestingly, as well as the ownership and freedom, and then kind of how that gets flipped on its head. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I thought that this was really high quality YA. I thought that Rutowski's writing was very good. I liked her imagery a lot, and I will read you a passage that I thought was really well written, and this kind of gives you a little taste of her writing style. It says, Kestrel's feelings were like banners in a storm, snapping at their ties. They tangled and wound around her. She focused, and when she spoke, she made her words disdainful. So I thought that that was a very beautiful sentence, and a lot of Rutowski's writing is very evocative like that. Also, if you're into strategy, particularly war strategy, this is has some of that thrown in. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. Really looking forward to picking up the second book in this series, and will let you guys know what I think when I do. Next book I picked up was Oh, the Meetings You'll Go To, a parody by Dr. Seuss. It's an adult picture book. It was very clever, very cute, nothing to write home about, but would be a very sweet gift for a recent college graduate or someone who's recently gotten a job, or just something to check out from your library if you want a little laugh. I read this aloud to my husband in bed, and we both thought that it was very cute and clever and a nice little story just to have a look at. So there was that. Next, I listened to The Boston Girl by Anita Diamond on audio. I absolutely adored this story. This is historical fiction following an older protagonist who is telling her life story to her young granddaughter. So she's looking back on her life. She was born in the 1900s and just telling her story. This was absolutely masterfully told. This is a story about pain and loss and change, but also about just living a vivacious life with the life that you have, no matter what struggles or things you're going through, just having a yearning and a want and just a love for life. And I really thought that this came out so well through Addie telling her story and looking back on her life. There's just so much wisdom in her words, and you get to see the stories behind Grandma's wisdom, which I thought was really cool. I felt like Addie was a real bones and marrow, just living, breathing human, and I think that that just speaks to how masterfully told this story is. I definitely think if you're into historical fiction, if you're into older protagonists, if you're into audiobooks, this is definitely something that you could pick up. The narrator had a wonderful Boston accent that just added so much to the story, in my opinion, and I would definitely say pick this up on audio. I think I will give it a listen again sometime in my life. I love Addie. I loved her story. Definitely pick it up if it sounds interesting to you. I don't think that you'll be disappointed. And the last book that I just finished reading is So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. This is nonfiction all about shaming on the internet, and this was such an interesting book. When I first started getting into it and reading Ronson's writing, I wasn't sure how much I liked it, and this is because he really lets the people that he's interviewing and talking to voices shine through. A lot of his writing is big chunks of quotes and conversations with other people, and at the end of this book I was totally on board with it and really enjoyed it. I think I had a problem with that is because I wanted this book to be a little more preachy. It is about shaming, it's about internet culture, it's about just being a kind human and how can we be better at that. And so I wanted it to be a little more preachy, and I might be a minority in saying that, but I felt like it could have been. But Ronson really lets the people that he's talking to and who have experienced all the things that he's trying to figure out, he just really gives them a voice. And I thought that was super interesting and a totally different way of writing than I have experienced. I do want to pick out a quote here at the end that I thought just really summed up what this book talks about well, and just kind of, I don't know, I just thought it was so wise. And it's not Ronson's writing, it's someone he's interviewing. So, the tech utopians, like the people in Wired, present this as a new kind of democracy. Adam's email continued. It isn't. It's the opposite. It locks people off in the world they started with and prevents them from finding out anything different. They get trapped in the system of feedback reinforcement. Twitter passes lots of information around, but it tends to be the kind of information that people know that others in their particular network will like. So what you get is a kind of mutual grooming. One person sends on information that they know others will respond to in accepted ways, and then in return, those others will like the person who gave them that piece of information. So information becomes a currency through which you buy friends and become accepted into the system. That makes it very difficult for bits of information that challenge the accepted views to get in. They tend to get squeezed out. When someone says something or does something that disturbs the agreed protocols of the system, the other parts react furiously and try to eject the destabilizing fragment and regain stability. And so the idea that there is another world of other people who have other ideas is marginalized in our lives. And I just thought that was so wise and so telling of human nature. And it made me think a lot about how I do that and how I see that happening in the world that I live in. And just, I felt like the call for compassion in this book and just the stories that we get to hear was really cool. I've heard that the audiobook is excellent for this, so maybe if you're into audiobooks, maybe something to check out. But I definitely think that this is required reading for anyone who uses the internet. I know a lot of people have said that. I'm pretty sure it's blurbed on the back that is someone else saying that, but I can see why this is just such an important read and something that I definitely will be thinking about for a while. So those are all the books that I have recently read. I've really been enjoying my reading lately. I am currently reading Homegoing with a couple other ladies and really enjoying that. And so I'd love to know what you've been reading. Have you read anything good? Do you have any new favorites? Was June a good reading month for you? Please let me know. I'd love to chat with you about it in the comments or about any of the books that I have read. I hope that you guys are having a great week. The weekend is coming, and so I hope that you guys have a great weekend, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye.